Hi, I'm Maegan, and my sister said she was going to a summer writing retreat, but she used my college fund to sneak away with a man. When I found out and showed my mom the proof, she looked me in the eye and said, "You're just jealous." But that wasn't the first time I'd been cropped out of the family photo, or the conversation, or the future. So tell me, how do you fight back when your own family rewrites you out of your own life? It started the way most betrayals do, not with shouting or slammed doors, but in the quiet of a morning that looked like any other. The kettle whistled softly in the kitchen. I was sitting at the table, still in my robe, poring over the college enrollment paperwork for my upcoming program in communication studies. My acceptance letter sat on top like a badge of survival. I had worked hard for that letter, juggling part-time jobs, late-night essays, and an endless stream of rejections until this one finally said yes. Mom shuffled in, her hair clipped back with the same plastic claw she'd used for decades. She didn't say much. She rarely did before coffee. I figured we were safe in our silences, hers habitual, mine necessary. That's when my sister's name slipped into the conversation. "Can you print something for your sister?" Mom asked, holding out a flash drive like she was passing salt at the dinner table. "She's applying for some writing retreat." I took it, clicked the file open, and skimmed the retreat confirmation form. Something about it scratched the back of my brain. There was no university letterhead, no professor contact, just flowing cursive fonts and phrases like soulful reconnection and undisturbed intimacy. I Googled the name. The first result was a romantic getaway in Vermont, known for its couples' spa weekends. I blinked, reread the file. No way. Maybe it was just poor branding. Still, I clicked through photos on their site. Rose petals on pillows, champagne for two, no ID required at check-in. A weight settled in my chest, and it wasn't from the coffee. I looked over at Mom, now pouring herself a cup, blissfully unaware. I didn't say anything. Not yet. That evening, I logged in to check the balance of my college fund. I needed to confirm a wire transfer to secure my first semester housing. The screen loaded, then it blinked red. Insufficient funds. I checked again. Sure, there had been a glitch. There wasn't. The account, which had held over $12,000 last week, now showed a balance just shy of $27 and some change. I opened the transaction history. There it was. A withdrawal that matched the full sum. The timestamp aligned exactly with the date on the file from Isolda's retreat. I sat still for a long time, so long the screen dimmed. My fingers were cold. I could hear the TV in the next room. Something about real estate or baking or both. I stood and walked to my room. I tried to sleep, but the numbers on the screen replayed in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. Later, long past midnight, I crept down the hall, the file still clutched in my hand. Mom was in the living room, a mug of tea beside her, flipping slowly through one of those big decor magazines she never bought, but always read cover to cover when they arrived free in the mail. I stood in the doorway and held up the printed receipt. My voice didn't waver, but my hands did. "Mom," I said, "we need to talk. It's about Isolda." Mom didn't even flinch when I showed her the printed transaction. The slip was still warm from the printer, my hand still trembling from what I'd uncovered. She took one glance, sipped her tea, and said, "Isolda's had a rough year. This retreat might help her find peace." I stood there stunned. "Mom, that money was for my tuition. You knew that." "She's your sister, Maegan," she said, gently placing her mug down. "Family comes first. You'll figure something out." I stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. My voice cracked a little. "So she lies, drains my college fund, and I'm supposed to... what? Clap for her self-care journey?" She tilted her head, that familiar condescending smile spreading like something rehearsed. "You've always been competitive with Isolda. Maybe this is about jealousy more than anything else." That word, jealousy, hung in the air like a slap. I swallowed hard, but my mouth still felt dry. "She didn't even ask," I muttered, mostly to myself. Mom reached over and gave my arm a light pat, as if that was supposed to settle everything. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." I went back to my room, numb. Sleep never came. By the weekend, I was still chewing on that night like a piece of gristle that wouldn't go down. Saturday was Mom's birthday dinner. Just the four of us and a couple of close family friends at her favorite seafood place on Hawthorne. She'd made a reservation and insisted I come early. I arrived 10 minutes before the time she'd given. The hostess brought me to a round table by the window where everyone else had already gathered. I looked for my usual seat, next to Mom, but it had already been taken. My name card was placed near the swinging door to the kitchen, at the edge of the table. I hesitated, waiting for someone to say something. No one did. Isolde was glowing, wearing some flowing linen thing that looked like she'd just drifted in from a yoga retreat. She waved at me as if nothing was off. I sat down. A waiter offered me water, then disappeared into the hum of dishes and birthday chatter. No one looked my way. No one asked about school or next steps or anything at all. At one point, I leaned over and asked Mom quietly, "Did you move my seat?" She didn't even glance at me. "Let's not make this about you," she said. That phrase again. Me being the problem. I blinked a few times and nodded like I was the one overreacting. After dinner, while others were still nibbling dessert, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through Facebook. One post caught my eye. Mom had already uploaded a picture from the evening. In it, she was smiling with Isolde, arms linked, champagne flutes mid-toast. The caption read, "My girls, so proud of them both." There was no third chair in the photo, no sign I'd been there at all. I didn't cry, I didn't comment. I just stared. The morning after Mom's birthday dinner, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that Facebook post like it was an obituary. My girls, so proud of them both. I wasn't in the photo. I had been there, ate the same dry salmon, laughed at the same jokes, but in the curated version of our lives, I didn't exist. I scrolled further down her profile, back through months, maybe years. Christmas photos, Thanksgiving brunches, even random Saturdays. If I appeared at all, it was in the background, blurry, or conveniently cut off. The framing wasn't an accident. It was intentional, like someone trimming out what didn't match the image. I clicked on one post from last Easter, a group shot in front of the house, Isolde dead center, holding a mimosa, Mom beside her. I remembered standing on the other side of the porch that day. I remembered taking the photo. Of course, I hadn't even been asked to be in it. I typed a comment beneath the latest photo. Missing someone? It stayed up for maybe 5 minutes before disappearing. I didn't bother reposting it. I already knew what message they wanted me to receive. Later that day, I went digging through a box under my bed. Old journals, faded birthday cards, that kind of thing. Near the bottom was a small diary with a faded cloth cover, the one Mom gave me when I was 10. She called it a book for your future. At the time, I thought it meant I was destined to be something. Now it felt like a joke I wasn't in on. I sat cross-legged on the floor, turning the pages. My handwriting was round and wide, full of dreams I barely remembered having. The smell of dust and old ink pulled at something tender inside me. The door creaked. Mom stepped in without knocking. She looked at the diary in my hands, paused, then walked straight over. She didn't ask, didn't blink. She took it from me with a single motion. "That belonged to a girl who didn't stir up trouble," she said. And then, like it was just any old thing, she tossed it toward the trash bin near my desk. It missed, landing face down on the floor. She didn't wait for a reaction, just walked out. I didn't move, not for a while. I picked up the diary, but the warmth it once held was gone. That night, I opened a fresh notebook. Not for anyone to read, just for me. A place where I didn't have to pretend to be okay, a place I couldn't be edited out of. I wrote one line, underlined it twice. They will not erase me. The light from my phone blinked. A message from a classmate I barely remembered. Sutton. "Hey, is your sister in Vermont? I saw something weird. Thought you should know." I clicked on Sutton's name, my heart already preparing for war. Sutton's message lit up my phone just as I was brushing my teeth the next morning. I tapped the screen, toothpaste still foaming in my mouth. "Thought you should see this," it read. Beneath it, a photo. I rinsed out my mouth, then leaned in. Isolde, in a cream sundress, was standing outside a boutique spa resort in Vermont. Her hand was tucked comfortably into the arm of a man I didn't recognize. They weren't just passing through. They looked like they belonged there. I stared at it so long my screen dimmed. There was no lecture hall in sight, no stack of notebooks or lanyards, just them, the porch, and a glass of champagne on the table beside them. I sat on the edge of my bed and scrolled through the spa's website. Couples packages, rose bath add-ons, no mention of workshops or literary anything. I checked the metadata on the photo Sutton sent. The date matched the exact day my college fund had disappeared. That photo said more than any conversation ever could. I wanted to forward it to Mom immediately, watch her denial crack. I even imagined her blinking at the screen, finally understanding. But then I pictured the way she looked at Isolde during dinner, and I hesitated. I wasn't scared of the argument. I was grieving the fact that I already knew how it would go. She'd make excuses. She'd protect the illusion. That weekend, Mom invited me to dinner with some extended relatives, an uncle visiting from Montana, a cousin I hadn't seen since high school. "It'd mean a lot if you were there," she said, and I knew better than to think it was about me. I almost didn't go, but something in me, it wasn't forgiveness, not yet, said I needed to see it through. Dinner was at a quiet little steakhouse in town. I arrived early. Mom greeted me with that glossy warmth she reserved for public moments. "You look nice," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "We're just waiting on your sister." Isolde arrived 10 minutes later, hair curled and cheeks flushed like she'd been kissed by a spa day. She made a show of hugging everyone at the table. When it was my turn, she leaned in, sniffled, and said just loud enough for others to hear, "I just want peace. I know Maegan's been under a lot of stress." I pulled back slowly. "You're unbelievable," I whispered, my voice low and sharp. She gave me that same wounded smile she'd been perfecting since we were kids, sweet and hollow. "I'm trying." Midway through the main course, I tried to speak up. I started to say something, anything, but Mom raised her glass. "To daughters who always find their way," she said, locking eyes with Isolde, "even when life gets difficult." Applause followed, mine didn't. I cut my steak with too much force, the knife scraping the plate. Nobody noticed, or maybe they chose not to. That night, back in my room, my phone buzzed again. "Sutton." "I didn't send you everything," she wrote. "There's audio." I stared at the new file, thumb hovering. I knew once I played it, I couldn't unhear it. I waited until the house was quiet, the way I always did when I needed room to feel something all the way through. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, headphones in. I tapped play. Isolde's voice poured into my ears, light and drunk, and so smug it made my skin prickle. "Of course I used the fund," she laughed. "She'll survive. She's smart. But let's be real, not Ivy League smart." There was laughter from the man beside her, low and conspiratorial. Then she added, "I needed the break more than she needed that degree. She can take out a loan. That's what people like her do." The room felt smaller with every word. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't even just betrayal. It was contempt, dressed in wine and silk and spa slippers. My life, my future, reduced to a joke in a resort lounge. I walked straight to Mom's room. She was in bed, glasses on, reading some article on mindfulness from her tablet. "I need to show you something," I said. She sighed. No surprise, no curiosity, just that weary, performative patience. I held out the phone and pressed play again. She listened, all of it, then blinked twice and set her tablet down. "This is beneath you, Maegan," she said finally. "Trying to destroy your sister like this? What are you hoping to prove?" My voice didn't shake this time. "I'm not the one destroying anything. I'm just done pretending. If you keep pretending I don't matter, I will make sure someone sees the truth." She didn't respond, just picked up the tablet again. Back in my room, I lay in bed with the lights off, covers pulled tight even though it was warm. I couldn't sleep. I didn't even want to blink. The audio still looped in my mind. And then I heard it. Voices, faint but clear, carrying through the vent in the hallway floor. My room sat directly above the living room. "She sent me the clip," Isolde said. "She's freaking out." "She's spiraling again," Mom replied. "Just let it pass. Don't engage. She'll back off like always." "I'm not sure this time. She's still our problem to manage. I'll handle her." That word. Problem. I was never a daughter, never a person to defend. I was a loose wire to be contained. I reached under my bed and pulled out the same notebook I'd opened weeks earlier. I wrote down every word of the conversation, date and time, then saved the audio clip Sutton had sent me under a new file name. Insurance. I opened my email. To Aspera Foundation subject, urgent, clarification on financial discrepancy. I hovered over the send button. My finger tensed. If they opened this, there was no going back. A week passed. I waited, hoping for some kind of email, some shift in air. When the message from the Aspera Foundation finally arrived, it wasn't good news. Unfortunately, due to unresolved discrepancies in your financial documentation, we are unable to proceed with your award. I sat still for several minutes, blinking at the words like they might rearrange themselves into something salvageable. Then I called the number listed in the email. A woman named Nancy answered. She sounded kind, patient. She confirmed what I feared. We noticed a significant withdrawal from your education savings account right before the award review, she said. It gave our board pause. We're very strict about financial integrity. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall. The thing about betrayal is that you think you've already felt the worst of it. Then it finds a new edge. I walked to the dining room, pulled open the filing cabinet drawer, and grabbed the manila envelope labeled college. I took it with me and found Mom folding laundry in the living room, a Hallmark movie playing behind her like background noise. I dropped the envelope on the coffee table. You need to see this. She kept folding. Maegan, just look. She opened it slowly, leafing through the transaction report, bank statements, and the printed out confirmation of the retreat and studio registration. I had highlighted dates, even attached a photo of Isolde's studio sign, all polished and newly painted. Mom didn't blink. She's rebuilding. You'll find your own way. That was it. No apology, no concern, not even the decency of shame. I picked the envelope back up. You don't even hear yourself, do you? She didn't answer. She just went back to folding a towel. Back in my room, I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I opened my laptop and wrote a message to Sutton. Thanks again for the audio. Can I talk to you soon? Then I wrote another to Ramona, my old English teacher, who once told me, when the story gets too loud to hold, you don't wait for permission to write it down. She replied within the hour. Come to my office. Bring everything. I shut the laptop and stood still in the quiet. The sun had dipped low outside, casting shadows across my floor like stretched-out ghosts. I walked to my closet, reached up to the highest shelf, and pulled down the old box I'd kept hidden for years. Inside were receipts, text screenshots, email printouts, every scrap of proof I had stored away, just in case. I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry. Just ready. I whispered to myself, if they won't tell the truth, I will. The folder in my hand felt heavier than it should have, like it held the weight of years I never spoke up. Ramona's office smelled like coffee and old books. I sat across from her, knees tight together, the folder resting on my lap like it might slip out of my hands if I loosened my grip. She didn't rush me, just waited, letting the room settle before speaking. Take your time, Maegan. Start wherever you need to. I handed her the folder. She opened it carefully, scanning receipts, printouts, the studio's registration certificate, screenshots of Isolde's messages, and the bank transaction history. Her brow creased once, then smoothed again. She kept her face neutral, respectful, but I could feel her judgment wasn't aimed at me. When she reached the final page, she closed the folder and placed her hand on top of it. You're not crazy, she said. This is real, and this... She tapped the folder. This can be enough. My breath caught, not in panic this time, but something closer to release. I'm tired of asking them to see me, I said quietly. She nodded. Then don't ask. Tell. Before I left, she promised to write a letter of support for the foundation. I've seen your work. I've read your essays. I know your character. I'll vouch for that. I drove home in silence, windows cracked, Portland's late spring breeze sneaking in. Back in my room, I placed the folder beside my laptop and messaged Sutton. Can I still get a copy of that video you mentioned? She sent it within the hour. The clip was 39 seconds long, the footage shaky, taken from behind a half-closed door. But the audio was clear. Isolde, sitting on a couch, drink in hand, talking to someone just off camera. Maegan? She's like a background character. Always has been. I needed that money more than she ever could. I'm rebuilding. She'll be fine. I didn't feel fine, but I felt awake. I uploaded everything to a secure drive. Documents, screenshots, the video, Ramona's letter once it arrived. I drafted my appeal to Aspera Foundation, reapplying with a full explanation and detailed evidence. Before hitting send, I added 2 more email addresses to the CC line, the principal of my high school and my mother. Let them all see it. My phone buzzed. A message from Ramona. I read your statement. I've shared it with someone on the board. Be ready. I stared at the draft, cursor blinking. Then I pressed send. I leaned back in my chair, heartbeat heavy in my throat. A new email notification slid across the top of my screen. Subject: follow-up required, Aspera decision. I didn't open it right away. I wanted to remember the moment I finally stood up for myself. I stared at the email on my screen, unsure if I'd read it right the first time. Then I read it again, slower. We believe in your voice. Your scholarship has been reinstated. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Not a sob, not a scream, just a long, silent exhale that made my shoulders drop an inch. Relief didn't feel triumphant. It felt like stillness. I printed the letter, held it in my hand like it might vanish if I blinked too long. 10 minutes later, my door burst open. "You went behind my back," Mom hissed, clutching her phone like it had betrayed her. "You sent that garbage to the foundation and dragged your sister through the mud?" I didn't move. "I sent the truth." She stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "You made a fool out of her, out of all of us." "No," I said steady. "She did that on her own." Her mouth opened like she was ready to unleash something cruel, something rehearsed, but she stopped. Maybe because I didn't flinch. Maybe because this time, I didn't look away. She left without another word. Later that week, I heard from Sutton. The video, blurred, captioned, trimmed to 30 seconds, was already spreading. Someone from a community forum had reposted it with the title, "When Privilege Speaks Aloud." The clip didn't name names, but those who needed to know, knew. Isolde deleted her social media accounts by Friday. Her studio's funding dried up quietly, board members backed out, sponsors stopped returning calls. There were no press releases, no dramatic statements, just silence, the kind she had once used as a weapon. Mom became quieter too, not distant, just smaller, as if something inside her had folded in. There were no apologies, no family meeting, no dramatic scene with tears and redemption. Just me, alone in my room, holding the scholarship letter and facing my reflection in the mirror. I took a photo, not to post, not to prove anything, but to remember. I printed it and taped it above my desk. No caption, no explanation. I didn't need to explain anymore. I was eating toast in the kitchen 3 days later when I heard the knock. Not the impatient rap of Mom or the overly cheerful tap of Isolde, but a slow, deliberate knock like someone who wasn't sure they'd be welcomed. I opened the door and saw Doreen, my grandmother. She didn't speak right away, just held out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. "This used to be yours," she said. I took it in both hands. It was heavier than it looked. I didn't open it yet. I just held it and cried. I sat on my bed, the weight of Doreen's bundle still in my hands, the soft cloth warm from where her palms had rested. I didn't need to open it right away. Some things were more powerful sealed, more sacred for the weight. But later that night, after the dishes were done and the house had returned to its usual hush, I peeled back the wrapping. There it was, my old diary. The same one Mom had tossed aside like a crumpled receipt. But now, its torn cover had been stitched back together, carefully, even beautifully. Inside the front page was a small note written in Doreen's hand, for the girl who didn't stir up trouble, but told the truth anyway. I sat still with that for a long while, the ache in my chest softer than pain, heavier than comfort. The next morning was quiet. Isolde had left town earlier in the week. No goodbye, no announcement, just vanished like a storm that never fully formed. The whispers in the community had spread fast. Her studio had lost donors, her clients faded away, and her name started showing up less and less. Mom barely left her bedroom. She didn't speak to me much, not because of anger, but something more hollow. Disappointment maybe, not in me. In the outcome she couldn't control. She moved like someone rearranging shadows in a room she no longer owned. There were no apologies. No, I was wrong. But also, for the first time in years, no lectures, no sighs, no manipulation masked as concern. Just quiet. One afternoon, I passed by the mirror in the hallway where my scholarship letter was still taped. I paused, looked at it, really looked at it, and then I peeled it off. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't need it to remind me who I was anymore. I folded it neatly, placed it inside a folder, and tucked it into my filing cabinet between my passport and a copy of my birth certificate. It belonged with other things that spoke for me when I no longer had to speak for myself. Later that day, I sat at my desk with a clean notebook open, a real one this time, not meant to prove anything. I wrote, I used to think speaking up would make me lose everything. Turns out staying silent already had. I placed the pen down, folded the page, and slipped it into an envelope addressed to Ramona. A thank you. Not for saving me, but for reminding me I was worth saving. I submitted my housing application for the fall semester that evening. A new start in a new place, with no one editing me out of the frame. That weekend, I packed my last box. Books, clothes, my framed photo from graduation. Before I closed the lid, I picked up the stitched diary. I hesitated, then gently placed it beside my laptop. Two things that held my story in different ways. I carried the box down the stairs, one step at a time, each footfall lighter than the last. When I opened the front door, the light outside wasn't harsh or dramatic. It just was. Warm and waiting. And this time, I didn't look back. Sometimes, finding your voice means risking the comfort of silence. I used to think that being quiet kept the peace, but it only kept me invisible. Speaking up didn't destroy my family. The lies did. And in standing my ground, I didn't lose them. I found myself. So let me ask you this. Have you ever stayed silent just to keep others comfortable? What would happen if you finally told your truth? If this story touched your heart, leave a comment with #1, or let me know where you're watching from. If it challenged you or left you with questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me what resonated or what didn't. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these voices forward.